Hello everybody, I'm coming to you today from a darkened room in the evening to talk about September, I suppose, because September is always a vibe for me. This year it feels different though, and it's interesting, but September has always been this month of feeling like a new beginning, like this fresh, very late summer / very early autumn experience is bringing this newness, this new beginning, especially in the context of taking up new projects, starting something new, studying something new, and it's always felt very exciting to me, something that I always looked forward to. Especially since September always brought this feeling of relief from the hot weather and the long days, and slowly feeling everything kind of closing in, beginning to end. So I've always been very fond of September. But this year it feels different, and I suspect that's because I am now facing the last 3 months of writing my book before I hit my deadline for it. So it feels like I'm very much in the middle or in the late stages of a project, and thus I can't really allow myself to start any new projects at this point, which makes this September very different to me and different to what I used to be accustomed to this time of year. September, in terms of seasonality, is this time when harvest is already finished, so a new quality rolls into people's work and focus, namely preparing for the dark half of the year. And it's always been something that just felt important to me on many levels, and exciting as well. Exciting for the shorter days, for the longer evenings, for the sweater weather, and just being able to finally retreat more, which I feel perhaps is also related to and has something to do with a preference for folks like myself who are introverted, because summer feels very extroverted in terms of everything. Everything's out there, everything's bright, hot, and just full of life force, and it can be overwhelming long term. So September always brings this pause and then exhale, and then time of retreat and rest, and spending more time indoors, preparing some produce perhaps, like canning or preserving, and that's where I find myself, always have found myself at the most comfortable, I suppose. So yeah, this year it's different, but I'm also very excited for this final push, and hopefully in 3 months being done with everything as was planned, and maybe even sooner, we shall see. So that's what I'm kind of envisioning for myself for this September, to be focusing on writing a lot. And I have been initially planning to do much more writing during the summer, but unfortunately, due to some unforeseen health-related circumstances, I pretty much lost one of those months, which is a lot of time to suddenly have cut off from your schedule. So yeah, I feel like now I really need to be catching up on things. I am not behind. In fact, I already have too much. So it's going to be an interesting process to be arriving at the complete final version and deciding what to cut off, what to remove, where to minimize in order to meet the parameters that I'm supposed to be meeting. And it's strange to think about because before I was writing my book officially, I was dreaming about writing my book a lot, and how it would be going in depth into all of those topics that I want to talk about. But in practice, the word count is always so little when it comes to that it's just impossible to go as in depth as I would like to, unless I would be allowed to create a very thick tome that nobody would be able to read in one go. So what I'm trying to say by this is that when your expectations meet reality, it turns out to be very, very different, and it verifies what you've been envisioning with the parameters of what can be achievable and accessible to people as well, and how the writing process, a lot of it is not about you as a writer, but actually a lot about the people who are going to be reading your work, because at the end of the day, I find that the value of my work is in it being accessible and actually making a difference, being useful, and not just being something that I am creating purely for myself. So that's been some of my takeaways from the writing process so far. I think once the book is actually published, I would like to make a more in-depth conversation, perhaps a video one, about the whole process and what it taught me, how it's been, and so on. But these are some of the takeaways that I just felt like sharing with you today. So yes, I'm really looking forward to the months ahead, and especially September, because September feels like this key month where I really need to re-establish my pace and see how to pace my work for the remaining 3 months of this writing process. So that's going to be very, very interesting, and I'm sure teaching me a lot about myself and my limits as well. Other than that, in September I am planning to finish reading some books or revisit some books. As I'm writing, obviously I'm constantly referencing a lot of sources, mainly in Polish, but there's also some books that I'm trying to be reading in the meantime for my own pleasure, because I am a book nerd and I love reading. And as much as I've been trying to limit my exposure to other books while writing my own, I found that I can't stop myself from reading completely. It's too big of a part of my life to just remove it for a prolonged period of time. So I will definitely be finishing The Charmer's Route by Roger Horne. I am somewhere halfway through and enjoying the book so far, but there's the other half to be finished still. And then the other book I want to read in September is Historiola by Nordblom, if I remember correctly. It's a book about narrative charms and the history of basically using charms, spoken word in the context of magic. So that's very interesting to me, and especially for the purposes of comparing basically what the author gathered with the facts that I have been able so far to gather over the years about the Polish practice of narrative charms and spoken charms known as zamawianie. So it's going to be very interesting to compare that, because the author does not include the Slavic culture as far as I'm aware. So it's going to be comparing with other cultures. And other than books, I'm of course focusing heavily on journaling. That's my outlet for writing when I want to just allow my brain to kind of decompress and pour all of my remaining thoughts that don't have to do with any projects that are ongoing, but just my everyday life and my practice, and being able to just pour that onto paper has always felt very therapeutic for me and like a nice release. So I am still doing that in my traveler's notebook passport size, and I would like to catch you up on that a bit because some things have changed. So what changed a bit is the setup of my traveler's notebook. I have some additions, some things changed. I was trying to test if I could use my passport size notebook as a wallet. That didn't work out, so I just currently have an additional pocket for stickers. I also added a calendar, and this is the first year that I'm going to be using a calendar in a different format than usual, because in the previous quite a few years I was using Kanban weekly for a standard size traveler's notebook, and now I'm just using the Traveler's Company insert for monthly spreads like this, and that's it. So this is going to be new for me, but I found myself just completely not gravitating towards bigger notebooks or planners, so this is what we have. Then I still have my main chunk, which is the kind of thoughts journal, where I just write my daily stuff, micro journaling. And then I still have my creative dump insert, which I walk you through in one of my videos about this notebook. And also what changed is that I have a new fountain pen for autumn, which is this cute kind of pumpkin color. This is from Ferris Wheel Press, and I'm also using the ink Autumn in Auburn, which you could see the color here. It's this nice pumpkin color as well. So yeah, I've been really loving this setup and how it's working so far. And when it comes to my practice, I am finding myself really drawn to revisiting old practices, old tools that I've been using years ago, and just kind of getting myself back into an older version of not necessarily who I was, but what my practice was some years ago. And I'm finding it really soul nourishing to be able to revisit and immerse myself in some of those practices or old tools of mine with the perspective of who I am today. So I've been finding myself mostly working with older like decks. For example, the Mary L Tarot is one of those tools that was my first very, very deep tarot love. It wasn't my first deck, not my second. I found this tool already several years into my practice with divination, but it was a game changer for me when I did, and I am currently revisiting that tool along with some older tools of mine, and it's a really nice cozy feeling to be able to do that. And as I am engaging myself with these older tools and older practices, I can't help but think about how it's different these days than it was those years ago in terms of the market, because nowadays that is a thing. There is a market for tools, for books, for everything related to the practice of witchcraft or folk magic. And it's not the same as it used to be. I find that it's much less about actually being usable and much more about being aesthetically presentable for the outside gaze, or for presentation on social media or other platforms. It's much more about how it presents than whether it's actually useful or not. So it's nice to be able to revisit those old tools and old practices and some older books as well, for reference, or just to remind oneself about the cool stuff that was out there years ago, and to compare, to contrast, to ground oneself in a completely different kind of quality of being a practitioner, which, yeah, it sparks a lot of food for thought, but I'm finding myself still in the middle of that process, and also treating it very personally, very intimately. So I don't think I'm ready to talk about that more in depth. I've been thinking about recording like a maybe video essay or whatever you would like to call that, about the new supposed trend that is out there that people call underconsumption or underconsumption core, which is supposedly this newfound way of existing for people, where they basically actually use the things they have, they use the products that they have until they fully finish them, instead of constantly getting more and more and never actually fully using what they have, right? So that's been something that I've been observing with amusement, I must admit, and been thinking about talking about this in a longer form, as I said, like a video essay, to consider some of the implications of trends like this for the broader witchcraft community. But I'm not sure if that would be something of interest to people, but it's definitely been something on my mind a lot for various reasons. Yeah, I've just been thinking about this a lot, honestly. So when it comes to my own practice, it's very much going back to some old familiar things, I would say. But also when it comes to just in general, the tools I've been using right now, and am planning to be using and focusing on in September in particular, there are these two decks that I'm absolutely in love with, and I just find them perfect for late summer, very early autumn vibes, and that's the Mushroom Oracle and the Dreamkeepers Tarot together. And I've been exploring that connection between the two, because I find that they just vibe off of each other so well, and the divination that I've been getting from these two together has been absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that's something that I'm planning to explore more in September, and mostly just gonna be journaling about that process for myself to integrate into some of the older themes that I'm revisiting in my craft, as well as checking in when it comes to my writing process. So that's going to be quite interesting. I'm really looking forward to September. I hope it's a quiet, calm month where I can just focus on the writing mostly, but also just existing and going out there into nature and observing, you know, the dying of everything and the slow descent of autumn upon us, because that's something I really enjoy and it brings me a lot of peace. So yeah, that's where I'm at currently and what my plans for September are. Let me know where you've been and how you are envisioning your September and what the vibes are. I would love to hear about that. So happy September to everybody and hopefully see you around soon. Bye.